coming up on Garden Talk.
Back crossing really stabilizes the genetic. That's how you're able to, without fimming, be able to go back to the original characteristics. If you crop out at week 6, then more than likely you're going to have a higher percentage of undeveloped. If you allow it to go to week 8, you're going to have a better chance of having the beans not be developed. Man, people are out here trying to make money left and right. They're not trying to produce the best product. They're just trying to produce product. So either you're going to be growing flour for yourself, or you're going to be a breeder. And if you're going to be a breeder, you got to be a breeder. 100%. A true breeder understands you're going to be getting rid of more than you're going to be keeping. Pheno hunt, man, it's truly a skill. You know, when you find the one that you're looking for and your paper and your numbers match up, then the results, they speak for themselves.
What's up, everybody? If you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and you're tuned into the Garden Talk podcast. This is episode number 74. In this episode, I interview Cartier Crops. He is a plant breeder and has been breeding for 12 years. He talks all about breeding in this episode, from how he got started breeding, all the way to the current breeding methods that he does today. Thanks to all of you who support this podcast through Patreon. If you'd like to support, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Mr. Grow It. Before we get into it, I want to acknowledge that one of my goals for this podcast is to bring zero cost for information about gardening, all plants, to the general public. That being said, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's episode who help make that goal possible. AC Infinity is sponsoring this episode. My entire ventilation system is AC Infinity. I have their inline fan, ducting, and carbon filter. I love the controller with the temperature and humidity programming and having control of different fan speeds. This makes it so much easier to control my grow environment, and I can't wait for the controller 69 Wi-Fi version, which also controls their oscillating fans and grow lights. You can use discount code Mr. Grow It for any of their products on their website, acinfinity.com, or use discount code Mr. Grow It 15 if you're buying off Amazon. Gorilla Grow Tent. Gorilla has one of the best double-ended grow lights on the market today. The DE Pro Series grow light has the capability to run both HPS and CMH bulbs. You'll get a 50% longer bulb life and a fixture that runs cooler due to their engineered heatsink and thermals. And on top of that, you can dial it all in with the optional DE Pro Series controller. Check out their website at growstrongindustries.com and use discount code Mr. Grow It for 15% off. And we are back. Welcome to the Garden Talk podcast. Today I am joined with Cartier Crops. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, and I'm actually lying. I'm not doing well, but we're going to make this happen today, Chris. You know, we're going to make it happen today. A little under the weather, some chest pain and whatnot, but let's make it happen.
I hear you on that one. I woke up with a migraine. I've been battling that all day and then some nausea. And I'm like, I'm going to battle through it. Thankfully, you'll be doing most of the talking this time around. So,
here you go, man. Hey, all right. I'm down with that. I'm going to keep my breath so that way we can make it happen.
All right, so what are we going to get into today? Well, you are you not only grow, you're not only a gardener, but you're also a breeder as well. And that's what I really want to dive deep into today, is really all about plant breeding. I've actually had a handful of breeders on this podcast in the past. And one thing I've noticed is that there are so many different ways to go about it. There's so many different things you can do within breeding, whether it be inbreeding, back crossing, self-crossing, you can create feminized seeds, so on and so forth. But not only that, but the characteristics that people are looking for within plants, males and females, vary. You know, it really comes down to the breeder. So really eager to jump into this conversation and find out kind of what you look for in your plants and how you do your breeding. But first, what we do in every single one of these episodes is an introduction. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into gardening?
Yeah, man. So, it was 1996, and my family and I moved to Indiana. I was 16 years old, and my mother had a boyfriend at the time, and they, you know, they did their extracurricular activities every single day. And while I was watching them, I was like, "Dang, man, these dudes, they puff a lot, you know." And I was like, in my head, you know, coming from humble beginnings, you know, my mind has always been on how can I add 1 + 1 = 2. And so The gentleman did blaze a lot. So, I was like, hey, maybe I can grow some of these seeds that he's leaving down in the basement, and maybe I can provide them, you know, because when you come from humble beginnings, your mind process is how can I get by? How can I survive? How will I make it? You know what I'm saying? And so, that was the introduction. Now that summer, I'll never forget that summer because I was able to take the seed, um, go outside. We live right behind a cornfield and large cornfield. And, I had this great idea of taking these beans and going out in the cornfield and planting them. Didn't know anything about anything. Matter of fact, the bowl I used was a bleach bowl. No cap, man. I cut a bleach bowl in half, rinsed it out, bro. Put some soil in there, threw my things in there. It sprouted, and it was like the most amazing thing. Then after they got so big, I just took it out and put it in the cornfield. Now, the interesting thing was that each day, I would go out there and water, and I would go out there and kind of entertain my thought of raising these things to make these millions of dollars off this one thing, right? And as I continued to water, I started to realize something really cool is, one of the things is, you know, when you take care of something other than yourself, you build some type of relationship, no matter what it is or what it could be. And at that point in time, watering my plants and being there every single day, talking to my plants. I thought I was going crazy, but being able to talk to my plants, be a part of my plant, uh, started to grow on me, and things started to evolve within myself. I started to learn a lot about myself that summer. It was really interesting because then I got bit by that bug that summer, and it was something really unique. And what was really unique was, it started to take different forms. It started small, I started to develop. And at this point in time, I didn't have a father figure around. There weren't too many role models around. I'm new in a place. And so this plant was really the only thing that was in front of me that would watch my tears, that would, like I said, I would talk to. So it was really a touching moment throughout that summer. And I remember the time I had to chop it down because it didn't look too pretty. But the time that came it was time to chop down. And, it really touched me in some type of way. But what I understood is that, hey, man, everything has a beginning, middle, and an end. And, and as long as we continue to provide ourselves with some of the best, whether it be nutrients or the best positive vibes, period, we can see ourselves flourish like this plant. Ever since that day, every single day of my life, I've had a plant around, no matter what it was. But the herb plant has always been a special thing to me, and it's kind of always been a place for me to go hang out and really spend my time and reflect on life. And like I said, there's nothing better than taking care of something else. So you get, there's a benefit that comes along, with that. And I remember when my mom ended up breaking up with her boyfriend. We moved into an apartment, and I remember we had an upstairs apartment, and my brother-in-law moved in with us, and you know he saw that I was growing my little things in the closet. I had a little 2x2 closet. He said, "Hey man, I work at this place, and this guy has a light. He's from Europe, and he has this light." This is the first time I was introduced to HPS, and I was like, all right, man, tell him to bring a light because I needed a light. I didn't know anything at this point. I'm 17, so he brings me this big bulb, man. This HPS light. It's the first time I found out what an HPS light was. It was 1997. And so he brings this huge bulb to me. And I was like, "Man, where'd you guys steal that from? That came off a light pole or something, And he was like, "No, man, it's an HPS light." I said, "HP, a high powered situation." Like I didn't know what it meant. We plugged the dang light in, man, and it lights up the whole. My mom was like, "What the heck is going on back there?" So, I have so many stories of when it all started and the journey and how, I got involved. But, realistically, planting that first seed in that field really, really did something special. And, the journey has been really cool thus far, and it's really helped me out, as a human being uh, along the way, man.
That's
I mean,
deep. So
you
wow,
can sit here,
1997.
1996,
97.
I could sit here all day long and talk for hours on stories that I have from the journey. But, that's 1996, man.
I
1996.
was going to say 1997 is when I started consuming. So I mean, that's way back when you started growing. So that's
Yeah,
over 20 years you have experience there.
yeah.
Where did breeding come into play? Like, how long have you been breeding and what made you get into that?
Well, okay, so it was about two. It was like around 2001. Well, at this time, 1998, Mark Emery from your spot. So Mark Emery was making a lot of noise in the 90s, right? He was doing a lot of movement, and being in the U.S., it was difficult to get any type of beans from anywhere, especially in the U.S. People were really, and if you had something going on, you didn't talk about it, right? So I would order from overseas, whether it be Canada or whether it be, the UK, Europe, wherever. The biggest problem was that I remember placing an order like in January, and bruh, it was like 9 months later when they showed up. I think I had like a couple kids by then, but it was like, man, it was like, man, I didn't know why it took so long to get to me. Now, when they got to me, the DJ short that I did run was fire. This was like F2 or something like that, F2 or three. Now they're up to five. So, you know, it was good, but there was always something that wasn't hitting. Mark Emery had some pretty good stuff before he ended up, going under with the law and everything like that. So when they would come over and I would continue to grow these flowers, um, it it wasn't what I wanted. Then I had a friend from California, 2001. He came to pay me a visit, and we started hanging out, and I said, man, how come? I'm wondering, why doesn't mine taste like that? Why doesn't it appeal to me the same way? So man, I always thought it was my grow hand. I always thought it was something I was doing wrong in the garden, something I wasn't working. And my friend was like, "It's genetics, bro." And so I was really introduced to genetics in 2001. So he said, "Yeah, man, you got to have good genetics to get good, get a good product." So I asked him to bring me some, sell me some, or whatever. He ended up going back to Cali. I gave him a few $100. My man sent me like 5 beans. And I was totally upset because I've never, the pricing and the whole thing. So I called him and say, man, where's the rest of the beans? He said, man, that's what you get for good stuff. So ended up growing that, and it was like off the hook. Right then I knew that, hey, I want to dabble in breeding. Now, at that time I dabbled and I was pollen chucking, not knowing what I was doing. I was just crossing, and the stuff wasn't coming out, not even better than overseas and not even better than Cali. It just wasn't right. I didn't know how to pick. I didn't know how to choose. All the things that come along with the process, I didn't understand. So I put it on the back burner, and it wasn't until 2000, I think it was 2012, 2008 through 2012, when the cookie drop out in Cali, is when I picked it back up, because I started delivery service. Here in Arizona, I was a caregiver for about 7 years, and I took care of a lot of patients. Well, at that time, they allowed people to caregive. Now, my flower was just the same flower as everybody else, because we all had like the same cuttings and everybody was running the same stuff. So I wanted to be different. And I knew that, you know, breeding was a way for me to really separate myself from everybody else in the crowd. So the first thing I did was go on that journey. We could talk about it a lot later and go in depth, but I went on that journey to really start to experiment, and contacted some people who were able to. First of all, I bought a cutting for like $2,000 and almost got me divorced. Uh, you know, and then the second cutting for another 2 grand. Yeah, I was sleeping on the couch for like a month, and my wife, people around me just didn't understand what I was doing. And I remember my buddy in Cali, he said, yo man, if you're going to play this game, you got to have proper genetics. Otherwise you're just another small fish in the sea. And so that's what I did, man, is that I bought these expensive genetics. I started experimenting, and then I started to study and really dig down and try to understand the plant. And long story short, I had one of the best delivery services in the valley for many years, called Speedy Nugs. And, so it just, that's really where it started, because I wanted to be different, and I wanted to have something that nobody else had, and some different type of varieties that weren't like anybody else's. That's really why I started.
Okay, so that's how you started getting into breeding side of things. So fast forward to today, talking about breeding setup. You know, you can do breeding indoors, you can do breeding outdoors. What do you do? Like, what's your setup? Are you indoors? If you're indoors, what size room are you in? Lighting, so on and so forth. Talk to us about your breeding setup.
So I won't give you my entire process, but I will share with you that it takes a lot of people to get it done the right way. Obviously, you can breed within one compound, one tent, one compound, whatever, but my process utilizes friends, people. I have a commercial facility in Oklahoma where we do our actual runs and we do our actual tests to run many more, because here in the state of Arizona we're in a limit, and we're limited to the amount that we can the flowers we can cultivate. Now the main thing is that I knew that I was limited with my caregiving card, and I knew that I had to keep moms around, right? And then at the same, because I know you're probably going to ask me about the males and pollen and whatever else, but I focused more on the ladies. Now, when I say more people helping out, there's people who would carry the males. So that's one thing cool about being a friend with a breeder, is that, hey, I can give cuttings to people which I think are going to be some of the best, and they hold on to the cuttings. They keep they flower, they keep her around in veg, and then if it is the winter that we need, then I bring it back, and then I breed within a tent. So I take the best of the best females and then work with the best of the best male. And I have a process when I go through that, but I use a tent, and I solo everything out in the room. Cut off the delivery service and just really focused in on honing that craft. Now, when we really want to do a major pheno hunt, then we utilize Oklahoma in that manner. So we can pop 100, 200 beans. And like right now, we're running the V12. And the V12, we pop, I think, around 100 beans. But usually around the 100 mark is a good mark for me, anyways. That's my thought process, of 100 to really get something swell out of there. We don't bring them back from Oklahoma back here, but what we do is we're able to identify and know that, hey, we have something special, and we possibly may breed out there, but we're not breeding out there now. So really, I utilize a few tents. I put the best females in the tent, and then I grab the best male that I can grab, that I find out of maybe 15, 20 males. I'll take the best male from that 15 to 20, uh, depending on the rub, the smell test, depending on the structure, and then also, what I want to see out of the crossing itself.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you how many plants you typically are hunting through. And it's funny, I was watching your video where you're talking about breeding, and you had mentioned that there have been times where you've gone through 100 and didn't find what you're looking for. So you had to start fresh.
Yep.
Multiple times that has happened to you. So it seems like
Yeah,
you have some real
yeah.
high standards when it comes to finding exactly what you're looking for.
It just happened to me. And many people from my network, they saw me go down to Costa Rica. I went landrace hunting in Costa Rica, and great experience. Came back, was excited to do this run. I did the run, made the crosses, started to run some experiments. Just wasn't happening. And in this game, and if a true breeder understands, you're going to be getting rid of more than you're going to be keeping. And I'm big on that, and it's kind of, I allow, like I always say, I allow the beans to speak for me. I don't run around the world saying I'm the best and I'm the greatest, or none of that. The beans will speak for themselves. And high quality, um, health is huge. And so yeah, man, it just happened to me literally a few months ago. Got rid of the females that I thought were going to be the ones, and she happened to herm. And then when she hermed, I'm just not with that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not with the herms, and got rid of that. If one of them hermed within 20, 40, or vice versa, I really start to remove those and then pop more, because it's just a process I have. But I'm really, really picky and anal about making sure I get what I want out of the work.
It can definitely be a long process, like you just said. You touched upon a little bit on what you're looking for in a pheno, right? You're talking about stem rub a little bit. I want to get a little bit deeper into that. What exactly do you look for? And I know this varies by breeder, right? Some people are looking for trichome
Right, right.
production, some people are looking for the vigor of the plants. The list goes on. What are you looking for in a cultivar when making your decision on if it's suitable for breeding or not?
We get our stuff tested. So terp profile is obviously a big one. Uh, the levels, the TH levels, making sure the levels are where I want them to be. The structure, the smell, the rub. The rub smell means a lot to me, and I think that's a special skill in itself. Because out of 100 plants, I can rub each and every one of them, and I kind of know which way they're going to be rolling. There's characteristics that a lot of plants carry, like the rubber glue smell, like a brand new pair of shoes smell, a grape, an apple, or fruits, some of the fruit type stuff. So myself, it's more than just one thing. It's a full collage of what I'm looking for and what I'm looking to express. For instance, I created a 1-to-1 that is very rare. 1-to-1. I mean, it was really close, like a 17 to 15 on paper. And you know, going through that process, it's like, okay, that's what makes the journey so long, because even though you can run 100, and doing the rub test, smell test, doing all this and that, what I'm looking for on the left has to make sense to the right. So the males that I'm looking for, when I utilize the males I'm looking for strong characteristics that then help the female to go where they need to go. But I'm also looking for balance. I'm not looking for one to overpower the other to, like I'm known for the OG cookie. The balance of the OG cookie, not one being more powerful than the other. So, you know, we could sit here all day and talk about how in the different ways that I then look for the phenos. But the honest to God truth, Chris, it's truly, like you said, it boils down to what the breeder is looking for. And me, I'm known for the OG cookie, because I love the OG and I love the cookie, right? But the cookie will have you somewhere over there, and the OG will have you sleeping somewhere. So I always look for that balance, and and that's just what I'm known for. And I cannot explain how my fingers rub on something, smell, rub on something, smell. People trip out on it, and it's I believe it's a skill you acquire over years of experience. Because there's different categories, and there's nothing like, I recently saw someone with some duck feet. I don't know if you heard of anything about some duck feet type of genetic, and everything falls within a category, and from there is when I say, okay, this is okay, this is that. You can start to put things in the category. Now when it comes down to looking for that pheno or what you're working on in the process, for instance, a gorilla butter I'm working on, it didn't have size to it. So I already knew I had something that was able to bring more size to it, but I didn't want the balance. I didn't want the size from the right. I'm sorry. I didn't want the size from the left. I wanted the size from the right, but I wanted the left to be and speak and to be more dominant. So we had to go through many, many, many phenos to find that one. And so Ron Hill from our group was able to showcase that within our group. And the journey's long, and when you find it, you're like, yes, because you hit it on the nail. So now you got what's on the left, the characteristics of what's on the left is really shining and showcasing, but you've added extra weight to it. Without the plan on the right wasn't what I was looking for, but I needed the size and the structure. It's a long process, and what I'm dabbling with now is the CRISPR, and CRISPR. I'm not sure if you're familiar with CRISPR. Many people aren't familiar with CRISPR, but I'm going to take that journey because as a real breeder, you're really looking to work with the DNA, and that's why we breed. We're trying to get the A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I. We're working on those letters. And with CRISPR, we're able to remove the E, remove the F, add in the A's, the B's, the C's, and now it kind of speeds up. It takes 2 years off of this process. So that's something we're working on. But the pheno hunt, man, it is a skill. It's truly a skill. And when you find the one that you're looking for, and your paper and your numbers match up, then the results, you know, they speak for themselves.
It'd be interesting to fast forward 10, 15 years and see DNA editing, gene editing, and how it actually takes us, how far it actually takes us and what we're able to do with it in the future. It's scary and exciting at the same time, because you get some funky stuff happening. I know they're talking about CRISPR with human gene editing, which is just super scary. We're not talking about that, but plants, I mean, it's
Right.
similar, right?
Well, I believe it. I not only believe. I mean, China and a few other countries have shown us results of tripling and doubling, and even mold. Like, for instance, that's why people love blueberry, because it's mold resistant. You can grow it outdoor, indoor, anywhere, and it's not going to collect any mold. Now, inside of that DNA pattern, you could take that DNA strand, that helix, and add it to another variety that is lacking that. So you could pull that out and put that in. I'm all for that. When it comes to humans, that's totally different. But we're seeing the CRISPR being used across the platform on plants in countries where they're getting low yield, or they need fast turnaround and faster cropping. I think it not. I don't think. I believe and know it will be the future of plants and food and things of that nature. Yeah, you are playing God, but at the same time, I mean, it's no different than taking pollen and chucking and doing. It's really no different. You know, a huge difference, but I mean, it's really you're actually making something better, and much more uh, something geared. And you're, like you said, cutting off 2 years of time, doing it the way we're doing it now. Saves a lot of time.
Yeah, it can definitely make things a lot easier. That's for sure. Circling back to the pollination process, I want to get a little bit deeper into
Right.
this. Some people will collect the pollen from the males and then pollinate the females later on, or some people will put the males in with the females in the same room and kind of let them do their thing. Pollen sacs start to open and things start to fly around the room, so on and so forth. What's your style of doing the actual pollination process?
I've tried it all, and the one I really enjoy is the natural way of throwing the bad boy in there, into with the ladies, and let them have fun. Um, I've stored pollen, and sometimes it doesn't work out as the best, the way you want it to. But for myself, I definitely enjoy putting the boy in the tent with the girls, let the party begin at a specific week. And man, I mean, that's the best way. Now, I have and I do collect the pollen, and especially if it's something that I really like and enjoy, then I would do that. But at the same time, I will then also tissue culture. So I have friends in the valley who tissue culture, and they do their thing. And when I really want to keep a male around, as opposed to pollen, I will then take a slither of a cutting, hand it to a couple of my buddies, and then they will store that for a long period of time, the very slow growth process. And that really helps me out a lot, because then I don't have mounds of pollen just everywhere. Now, that's why it's really important when you want to get into breeding, or you're breeding in your room. You're right. When that pollen's flying around everywhere, man, it could be a bad sight for the next breeding or the next process. So you really got to utilize the filtration properly, bleach, and make sure things are sanitized properly. I actually use like an ozone and kill everything in the room at the end of each process. I kill anything that's living in the room, and make sure that there's nothing else living and that can jeopardize the next process. But yeah, me putting the boy in the tent, I found to be, I don't know. It's like apple trees. When you got a male tree outside and a female tree outside, they just seem to work well together. It's nature. It's the way nature, the way it's intended to be. Um, but I have taken pollen and dabbled, but it doesn't produce as well as putting the boy inside of there. Something special that happens.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. I just finished up a run where I had the male in there with the females, and
Right.
at a certain day, just shaking the male over all the females and just completely covering them, and then killing off the male because I didn't need it anymore. But I harvested now, broke up the plant. loaded with seeds. You know what I mean? So if you're looking
Right.
for like to yield as many seeds as possible, you'll probably get a better result
Yeah.
if you're shaking the plant in there, and just cover
You
the
will get a bit.
females. I've done
Yeah.
it with, a little swab and swabbing different branches and stuff like that, but it doesn't get as much coverage, doesn't produce as many seeds as keeping the male in there. So I thought that was a big major call out.
And what's cool is that after you do that, because I have a ritual I do with my males in there, and we do our little native thing on it, and you know you only need to do it a few times and then get them out of there. So it's then you can start your cleaning process outside in the room, and you really start to sanitize outside of the room. But yeah, it's just a little dabble over the entire crop, and man, you're good to go, because even the leaves carry some of the pollen. So when your fans are moving around in the tent, hey, it's still going to continue to move around as the plant grows.
Yep. So I got to ask, how long is pollen good for, and how do you properly store pollen for later use?
You know, I've not ever kept pollen over a year, so I'm not sure after the year mark. But if I'm going to use something and work with something, I usually give it that year time frame. Could it be longer? I'm not sure, because I like I said, if I'm gonna use something a year later from now or something later down the road, because I do back crossing as well, then I would go tissue culture. And tissue culture, because you're able to, the plant continues to grow, but it grows at a very, very slow rate. The male plant, that is. That's the way that I keep my mail around, as opposed to pollen, because again, you can keep the pollen in the fridge, is the best place to keep it. It actually stores longer than if you just keep it in a room, at room temperature. You keep it in a fridge and a refrigerator, and things just, it works. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you got to be careful, because the pollen, if you pull it out, the moisture can make the pollen a bit sticky and gunky. It can happen, and I've seen that happen. So to me, tissue culture is just the way to go if you're really trying to, keep the male genetic around. And a lot of people, they don't understand tissue culturing. It's a long process. I don't even tissue culture. It goes somewhere else, and people then store and do what they need to do for myself. But that's the way I do it.
Okay, so you've pollinated your plants, they're growing, they're producing seeds. At what point do you know when to harvest?
Number one, like I like to tap. I found out that tapping the ladies at around week 3 is probably the best, especially if you want to keep your flower and you want to press the flower. You could do one good shake around week 3. Remove the excess, and then plant then starts to develop. Now, here's the thing: the seeds will finish in week 6. They can be finished. Um, if you allow them to go any longer, which I try not to, then after about week 7, 8, they then start to, because there's moisture, they then start to open up. So around 6 to 8, I'm really watching the development of the seeds, and watching the development of everything taking shape. I really don't focus on the plant anymore, meaning that I'm not looking at the trikes. I'm not deep into the nature of the plant. I'm looking at the create, because not every seed is designed the same. So some finish faster than others. The last blueberry we just recreated finished really fast, to the point that at week 7 it started already cracking. The seed started to crack open. So I knew I had to pull her and get her out of there real fast. It didn't give us time to flush or any of that. But my vibranium and my V12, they can run a full 8 weeks. And man, them suckers are like little boulders, and then they're really hard. Then you have the beans that are really tough and hard. Like my Cartier cookie, it's a very, very strong bean, which means that it needs to go the entire process. So really, from week 6 to week 8 is when anything after week 8, I think people are messing up, and I'm not sure if it hurts the seedling, but you can get the seedling to start to open up because of the added moisture, and it's like tucked in this ball of moisture. You know what I'm saying? So it may want to start to grow. And I've seen that. I'm sure you've seen that in pictures and online. Seeds growing from a plant. It's crazy.
I actually haven't seen that. Now, usually I'll see the calyx open up and then the seed will kind of drop off the plant. And that's one thing that I kind of heard in the past is like once you start having seeds start to drop out of there each day, or even if you like touch the plant a little bit, all of a sudden these seeds are falling out of there. Well, you probably want to harvest the plant at that time because a lot of the seeds are probably developed. Now, my next question would be when you harvest and you're breaking up the buds and you've got your seed there, it's pretty much impossible to have 100% developed seeds. A percentage of them are going to be undeveloped, and then the other percentage is going to be fully developed. What is a good percentage in your experience or your opinion, developed versus undeveloped seeds at harvest time?
Okay, so you got to understand what you're working with, because it boils back down to the time frame. And the thing is, if you crop out at week 6, then more than likely you're going to have a higher percentage of undeveloped. If you allow it to go to week 8, you're going to have a better chance of having the beans not be developed. Now, people talk about white seeds, gray seeds, brown seeds, tiger stripe, all this stuff. My Cartier cookie puts off gray, white seeds. So it can trick you into thinking that it's not developed, but it's really developed. So it goes back to understanding the genetic and what you're working with. So if the seed you popped prior were gray whites, which I love the gray whites. I mean, people say, "Oh, they're not developed." They're like, "No, no, 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 no. You're not understanding." Because the grays, man, they put off the most trikes to me. So when I'm working with that, I know what I'm working with. Then I watch that time frame, because when it comes 6 and 7, especially 8, I pull down. There's a better chance of getting your ratios would be definitely better. Now, yeah, when you make it to the latter part of the growth cycle, yeah, of course the beans are still developing, but as long as you went and you're cropping at the proper time, then you're going to have a better ratio by far, better ratio in your week 7 and week 8 of cooling down. Anything after that, the plant is still going to continue to grow and continue to flower, or not herself, but the pollen is going to continue to be around, and it's going to continue to produce seeds. But like I said, if you crop at week 6, which I know a lot of people do because they don't care about the ratio, they're just going to pull out the best because they're working with limited amounts of time. And when you're speeding up like that, you don't get a good pop rate. So that's another thing, is that when you do wait the time and then you do then start to germinate, you get a better germination rate when you wait. Better percentage as well of beans as well.
Okay, that makes sense. And then I know there's so many different ways to go about it, but kind of generally speaking, how many generations are you going to in order to get your desired result?
So, many people they work it a different way. I get down to F3, and at my F3 mark is really my telltale, because when you're in your F1, you can get many varieties from an F1. I mean, cousins, aunties, uncles, you get it all, right? But as you start moving down and you start pulling back, it's around the F3 where I really start to dwindle it down, and that's when you can really start to see the prize and stuff happening. Now, because it is an F3 and because I'm constantly inbreeding in a way, at times the F3, I will then bring in an outside to come into the F3. So I don't hurt the genetic makeup and create mutants. And because you can really mess up the makeup of the plant. So it really depends on where I'm at in F3. But F3 is kind of where I'm like, okay, I know I have something good. Now, if I make it to F3, and it's happened to me before, in 3 years actually of working on a genetic, I made it to my F3s, and nothing in the F3s I like. And I mean, hundreds of beans later, and there's just wasn't matching up with what I like. Because if I want plant, I'm looking for balance, and if I don't find that balance, then it's not worth continuing. I might as well run the beans that favor more to this side, or run the beans that favor more to this side, as opposed to trying to really recreate, because I do something special after F3s. F3s are really important to me, and to stabilizing the genetic. Really important.
Okay, so you go to F3s and then you cross with something. I think you mentioned in the past you're doing back crossing as well. Talk to us about back
Right.
crossing. What is back crossing and how do you do it?
Okay, back crossing really stabilizes the genetic. That's how you're able to, uh, without fimming, be able to go back to the original characteristics. Now, my process is whenever I'm working on a line, off the F1, I keep the female that I really enjoy because that's the staple. That's the one saying, hey, we're really trying to match and get as close to her as possible, but at the same time, the male as possible. When I make it down to the F3, that's when I'm ready to come back to the mom. Because when I come back to that mom, what I've done is there. Remember, I started with F1. I'm getting 500 different looks. When I get down to F3, I've really dwindled it down to specific looks that I'm looking for. Now, when I come back to that mama baby, I'm rocking and rolling because now my it's like here. So I'm working with 4, 5, 6. Really, you get around from 3 to 12 looks on the back cross. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but each bean you pop off of there are really going to be within that 3 to 6 variety look. And that's where it really gets the magic, starts to happen is when you get back to the BX1. Right now I have some stuff that's on the BX2, BX3s, and bro, consistency, because I'm not a feminized type of breeder at all. I don't rock that way. Back crossing, and that's the thing. Back crossing takes so long that people aren't willing to spend the time, energy, and money to stabilize something. People are just trying to, it's a great market right now. We live in one of the greatest markets in the world right now when it comes to the flower. Man, people are out here trying to make money left and right. So they're not trying to produce the best product. They're just trying to produce product. And that's a difference. You know what I'm saying? So back crossing is the way and the only way to go, unless you're using a CRISPR program to eliminate that. But basically, going to F3 is the CRISPR in essence. That's what we're doing is the natural form of CRISPR. And then when you come back to the original mom, you got the original mom, and then you got those other varieties, and then bam, you got a closer knit group of what you want.
Now, what about self crossing? What is that and how do you do that?
I stay away from self crossing, and I stay away from feminized. And I have people hit me up all the time saying I would grab from you if you had feminized. And I'm like, self crossing, man, it's two ways that it's done. You're stressing the plant. You're stressing the plant to either hermaphrodite itself. And if that's not the form you're taking, and it's true, you will get almost the same quality or the same genetic if you do it to itself. Yeah, you're going to get the offspring that looks just like that. But what a lot of people don't know is you are really you are tearing up that genetic because then it doesn't reproduce like it should. It just doesn't. Of course, we would love to see LeBron James cloned over and over again. But that next LeBron, he might have an ear on top of his head. So it's like, yo, man, hold up, LeBron. You can hear me on top of your head, bro. Like, yo, so, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, and I've seen this happen, Chris. I've seen S1s go against my F1s and F3s and back crosses. And I've seen feminized go against, and I don't want to say go against, but the structure of an S1 does not look anything like, the original process. Then it boils back down again to the marketing side of things when it comes to S1. But I know guys at S1 and they have great products and it looks great and all, but their plant isn't as vigorous, it isn't as healthy. And then when they're ready to clone and they're ready to move that genetic down the line, it doesn't happen. The makeup goes like this, and the offspring aren't producing like they want them to. So it's really like one and done. Once you get it, once you do it, boom, it's over. And when it comes to films, hey man, I'm not big into spraying my plant with chemical, to make herself freak herself. So then she's stressed out. That's how it happens. So then people ask me, well, my plants aren't herming and the offs da da da. Okay, but I bet you've lost a quarter of the weight, maybe half of the weight, or some type of structural condition, or there's just so much that's in the negative. And as a breeder myself, I'm from the old school, man. And I believe in Mother Nature and I believe in the natural process because then it isn't lying to us. You know what I'm saying? It's not lying to us. And it's a big market. I mean, feminized seeds, I mean, as a beginning grower, you don't want, I mean, I hear people all the time, Oh my God, I got 4 out of 12. 4 were males. It's the nature of the regular bean. You know what I'm saying? And so, people would dig to the films, and then 6 months later I hear, how come my plants aren't producing like they should? Or da ba-doop. And I'm like, man, I don't even like to speak on it because I've already told you 6 months ago what the deal was and what the demo was. So, like I said, this game is not a game of trial and error. Because if you want to play trial and error, then you're going to spend a lot of time, going 2-3 months, 2-3 months of trial and error. So it's like, yo, man, I get it. I understand why people use FIMS. I think it's great for beginners to get their hands in the soil and the clay and to start playing with the stuff. But when you're ready to get serious about your flower and your genetics, bro, nothing's really gonna beat the regs, man. It's just that's my take on it.
Gotcha. So we could sit here and talk on and on and on, but we're going to start to wrap things up. Just got a couple final questions for you. One of them is really for the folks that are new to breeding. What advice do you have for those folks that are new to breeding?
It takes a lot of time, money, focus, and consistency. And becoming a breeder, it's a beautiful thing. But if you're not going to lay down the cake for awesome genetics to start with, I always use this analogy when I explain stuff to people. If Michael Jordan and let's say Lisa Leslie had a baby, you're gonna get some pretty good offspring. I mean, it's just the way it may roll. I mean, you may pop off some 7-footers who are just jumping out the gym. That's just the way it goes. Even with dogs, like you don't see breeders reaching for the mutt that came around the corner. You're not looking for that mutt that came around the corner and that looks like 3-4 different other varieties, and then saying, oh, I'm gonna make a champion out of that. It doesn't work that way. I used to breed dogs, and when I came into this, it was the same way, same philosophy. And it's why it put me on the couch and why I was almost divorced, because I invested into the proper genetics. So if somebody's out there and they're saying, hey, I want to go on this journey and become one of the best breeders known to mankind, it starts with genetics, and it starts with regular genetics, not something feminized, not something, even a clone. Get away from the clone game, because I had to learn that as well. Like, hey, taking a clone, you don't know how many times that plant has been cloned. So you don't know the history of that situation. People lie, everything lies. The only thing that doesn't, numbers don't lie, is the only thing that's real. So invest into your genetics, number one, but then also cut out trying to flower in the same area as you're trying to breed. You got to make a choice. You can't chase 2 rabbits because you'll catch none. So either you're going to be growing flower for yourself, or you're going to be a breeder. And if you're going to be a breeder, you got to be a breeder 100%, 24/7, or it doesn't work. It was a big roll of the dice when I decided to go full-time breeding. And the only reason why I did, because there were a lot of individuals who were getting and paying so much for genetics. And man, I just wanted to help people out, right? So that's what I say. If you want to be someone who helps people out in this game and give people an opportunity, then hey, reach for the best genetics and go 100%. Don't go 50% at becoming a breeder, and do not practice pollen chucking. That will land you in hot water, and a lot of people not wanting to purchase anything from you.
Definitely some good advice there all around. So wrapping things up, how can the listeners find you, and what do you have upcoming in the future?
You can Google me. I've always wanted to say that. Google me, baby. But nsgclub.com, you can catch me there. CartierCrops.com. I help people out in the game and whatever else. And in the future, I'm really focused in on Oklahoma right now. Oklahoma, here in the States, is really allowing us to do our thing. And you see the brand back here. We're going to have it on packages. We just finished our second crop, and it'll be distributed all through the state of Oklahoma. So this was a dream and a vision, and it was an idea that started. And so to be able to wake each day and, move forward, because you fail many, many times. But as long as you continue to move your feet one in front of the other, you're a success every single day. And so this back here and what's about to happen in Oklahoma was something that's just been planned, and it's working out. And I'm really excited to see that face on packages and have product within the market of Oklahoma. But there's a conflict with me continuing to breed. I love to breed, but it takes a lot of time, energy, and money. I'm not too sure how long I'll do that, but as long as I'm here and I'm breathing and I have the resources and everything around to continue to breed, then I'm about that life, man. Because recreation is pretty dope. And I want to say this before you wrap up. Big ups to you, Chris. Big ups to you and for what you do in the community, man. Once I jumped online 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you're like one of the first people I saw online, and actually I was like, hey, this dude is doing something really cool, and you know what? I want to help people too. So you inspired myself to get up and make things happen and to help people and use the best side of my passion to help people move along. And big ups to you, because a lot of people know you, a lot of people respect you, and a lot of people enjoy to listen to the podcast and listen to you and the people that you have on. And I'm glad you made the transition from the teaching to really bringing other people in to then hear other stories and hear other people. That was a great move on your behalf, and big ups to you, bro.
Man, thanks for your positive words. That's really cool to hear that you've been following me back then, and I was an inspiration for you to get going. And I'm really happy for you. I mean, it seems like you've got your shit together, and you're doing some really good things in this industry. And it seems like you're using the technology in the future. We talked about CRISPR and all that stuff to advance. So that's pretty cool. If you enjoyed this video, click that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Every single weekend, I'm releasing a new Garden Talk podcast episode, and I would love for you to tune into future episodes. Cartier, thank you so much for coming on to this podcast. It's really cool to hear your story, how you do things, and I'm excited to see what you have going in the future. So thanks again. Peace out, everyone.